Hey class, we are in Module 7 this week and moving right along. It's hard to believe that we're really about at the midway point of the semester. So pat yourselves on the back for that one. Everybody is doing well and progressing right through this class and hopefully gearing up for the immersion week, which is coming up soon. Before I get started on this week's lecture, I wanted to just review some housekeeping items, okay? So for this week, we don't have a discussion board for Module 7. You have two pretty big assignments, your second reflection paper. I think everybody did well on the first reflection paper, so just make sure to review the instructions, follow them, make sure to include cover page for me, and make sure formatting is correct on those reflection papers. And then, of course, I'm sure the one thing that everybody is really thinking about, which is your first baseline video. So both of those assignments and the instructions for the assignments can be found in the assignments box in eCampus. If you have any questions, you can feel free to ask me about that. I understand in this day and age, you can have things scheduled with partners for the role plays, for the baseline videos, and at the very last minute, something might come up, like a COVID diagnosis. So if that does happen, let me know sooner than later. I also encourage you to try to schedule these sooner than, Thursday, because it can be quite stressful to try to do the baseline video and get it uploaded into eCampus. I've provided some instructions as well on how to upload into eCampus. You cannot just upload the MP4. You have to either download your role play into a Google Drive or into a YouTube, or not into a YouTube, uploaded to YouTube. Or if you're using Zoom, if you're needing to do the mock session at a distance on Zoom, make sure to just send me the passcode for the recording wherever it might land. You cannot, again, you cannot just upload the regular video to eCampus. It won't allow you to do that. And the other thing I was going to say is, try all other options to get something in the Dropbox prior to emailing me. Emailing me the video and the link for the video should not be the first option. And certainly if I start getting emails at like 11 o'clock at night on Thursday about an upload problem, we're just going to have to tackle it later on. So those are my couple housekeeping items. Also, just to make sure to clarify for the content in the module this week, I've got a little document on patterns of sessions, and then a check your knowledge, which to me is just a general practice. Much like some of the prompting questions I've asked in previous modules, it is simply for you. You're not required to take the check your knowledge quiz. And I'm not going to hold it against anybody if they don't want to, if it's not down there. So it's not part of the grade book, although you will be able to get responses and find out if you're correct or not. So with that being said, for the lecture materials, the PowerPoint I'm going off of this week is not the Ivy PowerPoint. It is the other PowerPoint that just focuses on the 5-stage counseling session. Excuse me. So to review, I just want to be clear about what our learning objectives are for this particular module, and why it's important that this module came before your first baseline video is due. So really with this session, or with your first baseline video session, what I'm going to be looking for are that you are able to manage the flow of the session, use some of the skills that we've talked about, use the skills we talked about in discussions that I've lectured about, that you are demonstrating kind of that initial understanding of essential interviewing and the basic counseling skills that are used during the interview process, that you are able to modify the techniques that you might be using, that they are culturally appropriate for the clients, and that you are conceptualizing the content that the client is bringing to you in an appropriate way. The same goes for the reflection paper in terms of what our learning objectives are for our second reflection paper. But really for the video, I, again, understand that this is the first time that this is being done. I understand that nerves tend to be very high. And I think that if you follow some of these guidelines, if you follow some of the tips that I have included in this lecture and this PowerPoint, it will well prepare you the best that you can be prepared for the first go around on these baseline videos. So remember always when you're going into this first video, for one, it's essentially an intake, a very condensed, we're looking at 10 to 15 minutes. Please don't go over that. There's no need for you to go over the 15-minute mark, but this is a very basic intake. You're going to be practicing your kind of elevator speech on confidentiality and professional disclosure. You're going to be gathering a brief amount of history about the client so you have a better grasp of who that person is, and it helps me as the observer understand who that client is. And then you're going to be opening it up to the client to explain why they are there to see you in that particular moment. And ideally by the end of the session, setting or at least having some idea of where the next session might go, the hypothetical session, if you will, but setting not necessarily concrete goals, but on your way to doing that. So remember, there's this basic listening sequence of using questions appropriately, not bombarding somebody with questions, not using closed-ended questions, open-ended questions to begin a session. Closed-ended questions only come from if you're, asking diagnostic type questions or getting that kind of basic intake information or clarifying potentially. Encouraging your client, paraphrasing and reflecting feelings and emotions, nonverbal behaviors, picking up on those as well, and offering some summaries throughout that 10-minute period. At least one at the end is good to have so that you're leaving the client in a good place. In general, Ivy has this great 5-stage model. Which I think is really useful, although I will say that once we get into theory a bit more, it may be that the 5 stages of this therapeutic process look different based on the theoretical orientation. But in general, when we start out working with clients, we're really starting out building rapport and structuring that relationship and structuring the type of work that's going to be done with that client. We're building the empathic relationship with our clients. After that, that's something that goes all the way through sessions, but once that foundation has been laid, right, then we're starting to learn the story of our client, getting their strengths, gathering data, gathering information. Why are they here? What do they want to accomplish? How do they see themselves accomplishing that? And then moving into a goal setting stage. How goals look depends on a theoretical orientation, of course, but in general, every client is there for a purpose, and it's important to specify what that is and allow the client to share that with you so that you have an understanding of where to go within that session. You don't ever want to assume or lead clients to a goal that you think might be appropriate for them based on the issue. You always want to be giving your client that autonomy to be in charge of the counseling session. They are the client, it is their life, and whenever it comes to goals, the client is the one that needs to be developing those goals because they're ultimately going to be the one that's working towards them. And then wrapping up kind of the 5 stages of counseling, you have the working phase where you're really getting into the nitty-gritty of the issue and any kind of resolution steps, specific steps, homework assignments that might come for the client. And then action, moving towards kind of releasing the client more on their own to be more independent and preparing the client to terminate the relationship. So thinking of, and I'm just going to go over really the first couple of stages because I think that's important to focus on, again, thinking about our learning objectives and thinking about the assignments that are due this week. So the empathetic relationship. So we oftentimes, feel like we're coming across as being caring and genuine with our clients. What often happens is that you get into this first session and all of that shuts down and you get stuck in your own mind and thinking, oh my gosh, what do I look like? What do I sound like? What am I supposed to say next? I don't know what to do. How do I respond to that? What did the client even say? So the goal in developing this relationship is to create an environment, a space for your client that will allow them to feel safe and allow them to feel comfortable to share information with you, who you're essentially a stranger, right? In real life. So relax. Work to relax the client, but also yourself in these first sessions, okay? Take deep breaths, make sure you're comfortable. Pick somebody that you're able to talk with beforehand and let them know what, the purpose of this assignment is and what you hope to accomplish out of it. Ideally, you're choosing somebody for this particular assignment that you already have kind of a working relationship, a trustworthy relationship with. But establishing trust is really a key factor in developing the therapeutic relationship with clients, because if a client can't trust you, you're not going to get very far. Make sure that you're understanding that time is needed for establishing these relationships. A first encounter with anybody can be a little bit awkward and tricky at first. And even if you are working with somebody that is a friend or a colleague for this particular assignment, you're working with them in a different way. And so give yourself some grace, allow yourself that moment to kind of settle into this, new and temporary dynamic that you're having with this mock client, because the rapport may feel different, it may sound different, it may look different. And I also caution you to not bring in information that you already know about that client, because you already have a pre-existing relationship of some sort. Because you would not typically know things about a client upon that first meeting, right? So try to just kind of clear your mind about who that individual is and how you know them outside of this role play, so that it can be an authentic experience for you. In general, if you're working with mandated clients, if somebody is, if a court system has mandated that they seek counseling for a certain number of sessions, if there are cultural differences, if your client is an adolescent or a child, relationship building may take a lot of time, and it may take more time than you might anticipate. But again, it's dependent on the person. A lot of it is dependent on their past experiences. You may be the very first counselor that a client has ever met with, and they might be guarded for that reason. You might be, just a number in a long strain of counselors that somebody has seen throughout their life, and they're very open to the idea of counseling. You might be, counselor number 15 in a series of mandated counseling sessions, and the person is just over it. So how the relationship develops and how you can begin developing that relationship in an appropriate way is very dependent on the client and their background, of course. But there are things that you can do to make, again, clients feel more comfortable in that space. And I think being authentic with the client, letting them know if you're feeling nervous, just say, hey, I'm a little bit nervous doing this, but, we're going to work through it together. Or if they're feeling nervous, maybe using that opportunity to kind of self-disclose what you're feeling in that moment as well, creating those connections. So when you're talking about the story and strengths stage of a counseling session, this is really where you're gathering some information, and it's key to be using the right types of questions in this stage of the counseling process. And so again, I know you'll probably get a lot of feedback that you're using closed-ended questions, and that is just natural. It's more natural to do that. But just watch the way that you're asking the questions. Try to catch yourself if you ask a closed-ended question, to restructure it, reframe it, or redirect the client in a different way by asking an open-ended question. And use those moments if some clients will just kind of word vomit on you, and take a minute to use those skills, try them out, test them out, of summarizing and paraphrasing the information that's being dumped on you, so that you're really gauging and making sure that you're listening and hearing everything the way that the client is intending to provide you with that information. And again, goals, kind of ending today's lecture, little lecturette on the goals aspect. So goals are incredibly important because it helps provide direction for both you and as the counselor and the client, to help them be able to verbalize and recognize what they hope to get out of counseling in general. Some clients, may be kind of the walking well that are just, needing to have somebody to talk to, and they may not have a concrete, you know, uh, issue or a specific diagnosis that is causing problems in their life. But by and large, the clients that you will be seeing in your work are going to have some real life trauma, real life experiences that have shaped who they are and why they're sitting in front of you in that counseling session. And so you really want to be clear about what you can do and what you can't do, and how you can or possibly can't help a client reach a goal. And the only way that you can understand if you can help a client and how to help a client is if you figure out what the goal is. And we are not there to determine goals for our clients. They are there to explain to us what they hope to get out of counseling, what they want to be different in their lives, what they hope to change in an ideal world. What would that look like? Are they trying to work on themselves? Are they trying to work on relationships? Are they trying to figure out how to make big life decisions? Whatever it might be, it is up to them to explain intended goal to us and for us to use that information. I oftentimes see students doing these mock counseling sessions, and a client will throw out this is really what I want to be doing in this session. I really want to be working on how I can communicate better with my mother. And it's a nugget that a client drops for you, and I say pick it up and run with it. If there's something that a client is being very specific about in terms of wanting to set a goal, don't just pass over that and say, okay, we'll talk about that goal later. Let's talk about a different goal. Use the information the client is giving you. It conveys that you're listening to them. And you know what? If you can help them resolve an issue within the first couple of sessions, fantastic, even better, and maybe then another issue will develop, and so be it. That's what happens in counseling. But don't think that it's wrong to help a client move forward in finding a resolution in a short amount of time. It happens. So with all of that, I'm going to leave it at around slide 9. Because I don't like to reiterate what's on slides. So again, come into the session, the mock counseling sessions prepared, read over things, take some notes on some of the phrases and statements you think that you might want to say or that you could integrate into your conversations. Take lots of deep breaths. Don't be afraid of silence. If you feel like you're getting stuck, just, take a minute, take a deep breath in, let it out, and then move forward. So what you can expect from me is some targeted feedback, constructive feedback, and what I look for is improvement from observation to observation. If anything comes up, please do let me know, and I'll talk with you all later. Have a good rest of your day or evening, whatever it might be.